changing the way you work and changing your productivity level. And I experienced this on myself. Full transparency, I'm a heavy user of the product and I'm a potential future investor. So Mario, welcome to the show.
Sebastian, I am so excited to be here with you. And you said something very key, potential future investor. We're going to turn that into investor very shortly.
Definitely. I have to admit, I consider myself a very modern person, and I like new technology, always trying things out. But you really tipped me over, I was starting to use your product, and I was saying, I love the tool, but, it doesn't support my old style desktop applications like Outlook, like Word, and so on. So I already had this workflow of using these products, and I really found it hard to use FlyMSG because it didn't talk to these products. And then you said, the way to go is SaaS, and I said, yes, he's right. I mean, I'm an investor in SaaS products, but I'm not using it. And I tell you what, and then I spent a couple of hours changing the way I work with these tools, and I figured out that, hey, this is such an amazing process only using these tabs in Chrome, and using FlyMSG to improve my productivity. So thank you so much for teaching me how to be innovative and modern.
Well, they say we're creatures of habit, right, Sebastian? So
yes,
when we change is hard, but not only is change hard, it's harder for someone like you and I who've been around for 20 plus years when we started doing things like managing email a certain way. And those changes require us to change our process, our thinking, our methodology. And then you start realizing, man, I can't do certain things in SaaS. And that's when you start loading on applications. But the efficiencies that you gain in being able to have multiple windows, logging in here, logging in there, and then also automation. You get to start having things that improve your productivity, which is, of course, we're all about in terms of improving productivity with FlyMSG. So I'm glad that we converted you, and I'm even more happier that you're using FlyMSG, and cool that you're actually finding some features and functionality that we didn't even think about in terms of use cases. So thank you very much for your help in supporting the product.
You're welcome. But let's talk about you. You have a very interesting story. You actually pivoted your business quite drastically. Give us a kind of a story in a nutshell. How did you get to where you are right now?
Sure. So first, let me start with who Vengreso is. And Vengreso actually is, if you think about who we were and who we are today, Vengreso today is the creator of FlyMSG, which is a text expander and personal writing assistant that really helps today's knowledge workers. So anybody with a computer that works all day long with a computer to say goodbye to repetitive messages and tasks with just a few keystrokes every single day. So that's who we are today. But who we were is Vengreso actually is a 6-year-old startup. And we actually started out as a sales prospecting training company focused just on the vertical related to selling. And we became the world's largest sales prospecting training company. In fact, some of the largest sales training companies in the world, Miller Heiman Group, Sandler, as an example, actually utilized Vengreso and purchased our training to be able to help their individual sellers do prospecting. And that was a huge feather in our cap when the largest sales training companies in the world hired for the first time, an outside sales training company doing prospecting to help them. But, interesting, that's who Vengreso was. And then in 2022, August of 2022, we actually converted, to your point, to a software as a service company focused exclusively on growing the business related to FlyMSG. And how we got here is an interesting story. And I think all the entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders out there will appreciate this story. I'd like to say, Sebastian, that I was the super smart guy that planned all of this out and that I had forecasted where we would be. This was my vision, and then voila, it came to be. Unfortunately, I'm not that super smart guy. But what I am is the guy that can look at trends And then based off those trends, I can make decisions that will impact us for the future to come. So I'll start out with, in our sales prospecting training company, when we delivered into the enterprise or to individuals, we always gave revenue producers, could be a business owner, could be a startup company, it could be an entrepreneur, could have been an enterprise company, from the Ciscos of the world to the Juniper Networks to the ADPs, you name it, we had it. And so what we gave them was a playbook. And in that playbook, it was a 22-page playbook with 60 different scripts inside there. And those scripts could be used for cold email outreach. It could be used for wishing someone a happy work anniversary on LinkedIn and converting that into an appointment. You name it, we had the use case. Now, what was interesting is when we gave this playbook out to sellers, what we discovered was that sellers would go through and they would modify for their individual taste, flavor, style. They would then save that. And in addition to that, their managers or enablement organizations would create another set of messaging that they would utilize. Yeah. And what you had now is two different playbooks that the sellers would use. So what they did was, inevitably, is they'd copy and paste from this one, copy and paste from this one, and they would merge that together to have their own set of greatest hits, if you would. And when they did that, they were still, on average, they would store that in, well, before I go the on average, they would store that in a Google Doc, a Word doc, OneNote, Evernote, Notepad, notebook, draft email, or worse yet, they wouldn't store it anywhere, and they would go to their sent folder and they'd hunt and peck for messages. Yeah. So on average, it took a seller about 1 minute to 15 minutes per message per engagement with a buyer. Now, as you can imagine, that was way too much time to be spending and to be effective, especially in COVID, when you were having to do more to get to those resources, since they were now hidden behind all the different walls, a mobile phone, a virtual office, no office that they were going to, no desk phone, etc. So what we did was we created FlyMSG, where an individual can take all of their messages, categorize them, subcategorize them, put them into the cloud, and literally, with a few short keystrokes, it would launch out the entire message. So as an example, if I were to type in the phrase -BAM for book a meeting. Now, normally what I would type there for book a meeting is the following words. I'm going to read it to you. To make life easy, I've placed my entire calendar online so we can avoid email scheduling volleyball. Here's the link. The URL is inserted. Please click on that link and schedule a 30-minute meeting when both of our calendars show free. Does that work for you? ? I look forward to chatting. Now, if I were to type that out, that's going to take me to think about that. That's going to take me about 1 minute to 2 minutes to type that out and correct the spellings and make sure it's got the proper syntax, grammar, all that good stuff. So what we did was, by typing in 4 characters, -BAM, it completely builds out that entire message as a snippet or as an entire message that I can utilize on LinkedIn, in my Salesforce or HubSpot or Pipedrive or wherever it might be, or on email as an example, online, Outlook, or in Gmail. And what we did was we started increasing the productivity of individual sellers and helping them save an hour a day just by putting all these messages into the cloud. So that's where we started from. Now, interestingly, we actually launched this product, never sold it as a standalone product, had it open in the Chrome store, and we only gave it away as part of our process as part of an enterprise training program. Okay. So that was December of 2020. Here gets where it starts to get juicy now that all your listeners are actually understanding who we are and what we did. So in December 2020, we launched that. We onboarded maybe about 400 customers. That was part of our enterprise training program. Now fast forward to November 2021, and I woke up and I had an alert that a company by the name of PillPack had onboarded their digital pharmacist to FlyMSG. And I thought, what the heck are digital pharmacists doing on top of a sales productivity tool? Yeah. So what I came to find out was that pharmacists also have repeatable messages. We received your prescription couldn't be processed, your insurance didn't go through. And so they were utilizing us for those same types of repeatable messages. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Wow, I never thought about that use case. Then I said, well, how many users do we have on the platform? And at that time, we had about 2,000 users on the platform. Now, remember, I just said we only onboarded about 400 folks through our enterprise training program. So we all of a sudden grew from overnight 400 to 2,000 users on the platform. Amazing. And what was interesting was Sebastian, the business owner, told Mary, the doctor, who told brother-in-law John, who was a pharmacist, who told. And all of a sudden now we have this viral word of mouth marketing going on for users joining onto the platform. And that's when we started down on some deep research. Now I'll take a pause there to allow you to just ask some questions about this journey, but that was the catalyst for us to go to the next step.
I mean, this is very interesting. So basically by pure coincidence, this whole story developed and you sort of went into this direction where you're going right now. Just
like I said earlier, I wish I could say I was the super smart guy, but I was a smart guy that started watching and looking for a trend. So to your point,
exactly.
At this point, I had to make a decision on going to this path because all we were doing is we were selling enterprise training. And that enterprise training was a cost per head, and bundled into that was the FlyMSG software for sellers to be able to use as a value-added component because we had all these sales scripts. Yeah. So to your point, the $1 million question that I asked was, out of the 2,000 users, when I discovered that we had that many users on the platform, was who are all these users? Now, this should show you how deeply we were watching this line of business, because I didn't even know who these people were. We hadn't even enriched the data. We didn't really care about that. All we cared about was our sellers and helping to equip the sellers. So I asked the team, can you enrich this data? Can you tell me who are all of the users? And this is where it got really interesting. What we discovered was that at that time, only 35% of all the users were from the sales line of business. 35%. Yeah. So that meant that there were 65% of non-sellers utilizing our product. And that's when I said, aha, what do we have here? And so then we looked at, okay, let's take a look at the primary use cases and let's see who those people are. And sure enough, we did. We enriched the data. Sales happened to be the largest, 35%. Customer service came in very close, right behind that.
Repetitive answers from customer service.
Exactly. Things like answering frequently asked questions through online chat or through your service desk, as an example. Customer success managers for onboarding new customers and going through a series of 2 to 8 messages that would basically help to onboard an individual customer, if you would. And then we also had human resources. Welcome to your first day on the job, Sebastian. Here's what you do day 1. Message 2, here's what you do day 2. Message 3, here's what you do day 3, right? We also had it for HR offboarding. Sebastian, today's your last day on the job. I'm sorry, turn your equipment in here. Or helping leaders to be able to do terminations. What do you say after you've spoken to somebody and you've terminated them? What's the right messaging? What's the right verbiage? Then we also had recruiters as well, was another huge user group. And these recruiters were utilizing it for obvious reasons, outbound messaging. Sebastian, I'd be interested in talking to you. Congratulations, you moved on to your next step. Those are the types of messages that we had discovered were happening.
Which is also sales in the end.
And especially if you look about the outbound, especially. But interestingly, we also had this massive other group that represented a large swath of people that you wouldn't think about. Pharmacists, I mentioned. Or how about this one? College professors. And they had built out a series of 16 messages to correspond to their 16-week course program that they had over the semester of what to do, when to do, what was happening next. Accounts payable. You owe me money. The right messaging that doesn't really piss off a customer, but at the same time demands payment. And we had all these micro use cases and we were like, oh my gosh. So what I did was I said, okay, what we need to do now is we need to compare these primary user groups and see if they match to our competition who's marketing the same exact technology to the horizontal, whereas we were focused on the vertical sales. And sure enough, Sebastian, It was an exact replica of the exact same use cases. What happened to them, whether it was organically or whether it was by design, is the same thing that happened to us. And this all happened organically, that all of these users began to find the product and essentially build out their messaging, their needs, their systems, their tools, etc., as a direct result of them finding it and them trying to fill a need to increase their productivity and get back time in their day. And that's when the pretty deep thought, critical thinking started happening.
Yeah, but this is a very interesting learning. Yeah, because often we create a business, we have a clear idea where we want to go, and then something happens, like for you, and then suddenly we go in a slightly or completely different direction. But it's not that we failed or so. No, it's the journey which is just leading us to this destiny. Yeah? And I have a clear belief in life is happening for you, yeah, and that things they have a purpose. And in your case, you had to go this path to find this niche, or not really a niche, but find this space for you, and then turn this into a productivity tool for different sectors.
Well, that's exactly where we were up against. December of 2021, a year ago, we were looking at, the future direction of Vengreso. We had become an amazingly well-known company within the sales industry. Large technology companies would come to us and they would give us their technology for free in exchange for us being a voice for them. They would sign me on as an advisor, and us being able to, one social post that I would do would get them tons of visibility, right? As a social influencer, as well as my co-founder, Vivica, who was also a social influencer as well. I specialized in the sales line of business, and she specialized in social media and content marketing. So in those particular areas, people would come to us left and right. And this time, if you would, was a critical moment in time for us, because what we had to think about was, what does our total market look like in going after the sales space? Well, that was 40 million B2B sellers that we could go after. That's a huge market, right? And there's plenty of great technology companies that have focused in on that line of business. Wonderful. But then we had to take a look at what is the productivity market that we were going after, otherwise known as PMS, right? Productivity Management Software Space. By the way, it needs a new acronym. But but that having been said, that was 1 billion knowledge workers around the globe. 1 billion knowledge workers. Yeah. And so as I started thinking about what was our ticket to the next step and the next evolution, how could I bridge together what we've built to what we could potentially be by going after this larger market and essentially scaling us so that we had recurring revenue that people were interested in. Now, don't get me wrong. We actually built recurring revenue on our subscription license business for the education component. And that actually still today is what is attracting investors, because that's recurring. However, how could we scale that in mass quantity? And that's where FlyMSG opened up this door. So Vivica and myself made a decision that we were going to convert the company. Now, this was a tough call, because you do it wrong, you tank the company. You do it right, you grow the company. So what we discovered was, after analysis, and I took a lot of time to go through deeply about what we would do, how we would do it, what the plan looked like, I mapped out an 8 to 10 month long plan. 8 to 10 months. And I said, it's going to take us this long to pivot. Yeah. And we had to be perfect timing to stop taking on enterprise customers, make sure we had enough cash in the bank, and then also begin funding so that we could survive, essentially, or weather the storm until somebody actually funded us in a significant way. So because I had never been in my 27 years on the fundraising side, I've always been on the growth and scale side, I needed help. So I went out and I hired an advisory firm. I still believe it was the single best investment I've ever made in business, ever. And I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars in business and spending on wasteless things that I didn't need. And so the gentleman I found, his name was Alejandro. And Alejandro actually was a shark on season 6 of the Shark Tank. And I hired him and I worked with him and his firm from January through April, 5 months. and we developed our go-to-market strategy. We developed our financial forecasting, P&L, and our balance sheets. We developed our pitch deck. All of those things we worked on. And it was the most amazing process to have gone through. And if anybody's listening in, I don't get me wrong. I went out and got books like Get Backed as an example. And that was by Evan Loomis and Evan Bayer. Some of those books. I also started getting training programs. I started feverishly reading all kinds of great blogs and articles from different types of sites that tell us, how to go about fundraising, the process and what that looks like, and, what investors are looking for. So I hired Alejandro. It was like my Y Combinator school, private Y Combinator school. And at the end of it, we decided in May of 2022 that we were going to convert the company from LLC to an Inc. to attract investors for obvious reasons, because they like investing inside of a corporation as opposed to an LLC. I also decided that because of our product being a product-led growth with sales-led growth, a hybrid, that I needed to use our social influence to be able to attract target buyers and also use it as a way to be able to advertise the product FlyMSG to help people increase their productivity. And I remember when I came up with this idea, Sebastian, that I was going to launch a crowdfunding campaign, our advisor said to me, that's the worst thing you can do. Don't do it.
Not the thing to go for.
And I was like, but why? I'm like, investors, if they think that if I'm evangelizing and I'm saying that I'm a influencer, they're going to ask me, why aren't you using your network to influence either purchasing or money? And exactly. So they said, don't do it. And I said, but why? And they said, because no traditional VC wants to deal with somebody who's got 100 or 1,000 people on their cap table. And that's essentially what crowdfunding does, is it takes all those investors and puts them onto your cap table in normal cases. So I said, well, is that the only reason why? They said, for the most part, that's what it is. There's a little stigma that they don't think you're serious about fundraising. And I said, well, geez, I can't imagine that people are thinking like that. Because, haven't they got into the 21st century where this is like the name of the game, right?
Where you use Chrome to work and not your old desktop applications.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Leverage a SaaS-based application versus a thin client or a thick client on your computer. Exactly. So what was interesting is that as I started my rounds, investors absolutely did not want to talk to us because we were running a crowdfunding campaign until I told them the magic words. And so that's where I had to take some time, and I had to listen to that advice. And when they told me don't do it because of that reason, that they don't like dealing with, hundreds or thousands of people on your cap table, I went out to the big 4 crowdfunding campaign sites, and that's WeFunder, Seed, Invest, Republic. And by the way, this is not a plug for any of those vendors or partners at all. I'm just telling you what I did, my journey. And I found out that out of the 4, the largest one, WeFunder, took all investors and rolled them up into what's called an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. Think of it, for those of you not familiar with an SPV, think of it like an LLC, right?
Like a virtual investor on your cap table?
Exactly right. Yeah. So you roll all the individual investors up to the SPV, and then that one SPV now becomes the investor on the cap table. And you select, you get the choice, you select what's called a lead investor. It's not the person who's actually giving the most money. It's the person that will actually sign all the documents and make decisions for the group of investors when the time comes to make those decisions. So I chose WeFunder, and I went back to the advisor firm and said, hey, does this solve the problem? And they were like, yeah, I guess it does. It solves the problem, right? Because you end up with one item on the cap table. So I did that, and I selected WeFunder. Now this is where it gets juicy. And so with that in mind, these platforms, they tell you that it takes 15 minutes and you'll be up and running. And for anybody listening in, what I'm going to tell you is I am probably their worst customer, because everything they told me is 100% a lie. 100%. They told us that they would bring in at least 35% of the total amount of revenue and the fundraise, that they would be doing advertising, that it would take 15 minutes to get up and running. And so once I got into this, it took us 75 days to get up and running. And that was, mind you, working at warp speed The moment that I got something is the moment that we started on it, and we would turn things back around within a matter of days. And part of the delay was that now, of course, because we were crowdfunding, we had to do an audit on our financials, and because it's being publicly advertised, and so the SEC has all these requirements. And so, I walked into this completely blind. I had no knowledge about it whatsoever. And in the end, we still have a crowdfunding campaign open on WeFunder. So if you go to wefunder.com/Vengreso, that's one S, Vengreso. I encourage you to go out there, look at the campaign. If you're thinking about this, I had spent, I can't even tell you how much time preparing, developing, looking at all the different top performing sites, matching some of the capabilities, even the smallest thing, Sebastian, as having emoticons inside of your top page at the top of the fold, right? What the difference that made. So I deep dove into this. And finally, we launched our campaign along with we decided to do a private simultaneous raise. So a 506B and a regulated CF at the same exact time. And we launched it on July 27th. That was after we had made the decision in May to go about opening up a crowdfunding campaign.
Wow. What a journey.
And it's not done. Now, there's plenty more to the story that I can talk about. That's for sure. But that gets you, essentially to where we were at and all the pitfalls that we discovered along the way, and learning lessons. And oh my gosh, I mean, just the things that, we were told. And by the way, mind you, we've raised almost $250,000 through this methodology, the 506B, along with the crowdfunding campaign. And by the way, that's a pre-seed money. That's a good chunk of money, right? We're not talking about your $30,000 on Kickstarter. We're talking about $250,000. And that came from 145 investors. So if you think about it as an influencer, I have people that know, like, and trust me. And these individuals, of course, combine that with my 27 years worth of B2B sales, marketing, and executive leadership, and the fact that I actually took Vengreso as a total self-funded bootstrap company from nothing to the world's largest sales prospecting training company. All of these people have stood behind me and said, I'm going to become an investor. Some people wrote $50,000 checks. Some people wrote $100 checks. But I didn't care. What I cared about is that every one of those crowdfunding investors would turn around, because I had a PLG, a product-led growth motion. They would turn around, and not only would they invest, but they would become a customer, and they tell three more, and they tell three more, and they tell three more. So it was the amplification. And then in addition to that, of course, being the sales prospecting training company specializing in talking about LinkedIn, we have an entire playbook built out for getting our Vengreso logo as the creator of FlyMSG onto everyone's LinkedIn profile and using that as an advertising tool. And we have literally found almost $50,000 worth of new investment just as a direct result of someone else advertising that we were fundraising and that they became an investor. So it was very logical, very methodical in terms of the approach that we took. And now we move into our next round, which I still have crowdfunding open, and I'm still taking money in from those that know, like, or trust, or want to get in. By the way, Sebastian, I'm an early stage investor myself. And one of my greatest success stories was being one of the first 37 investors into a company by the name of Seamless.ai, Brandon Bernanson, who was the CEO. And Brandon came to me, and I kid you not, I said to him, hey man, I don't think this is going to go because there are so many players inside of this space. But you are so freaking passionate, and you have all of the tenacity to be able to make this happen. I'm going to get behind this because of you, not because of any other reason, but because of you. And of course, when you're doing early stage investing, really, there's only two things that you can measure, especially when you are low on revenue. It is, do they have a burning, red hot, fiery, flaming issue that you're solving? Yeah. And then secondarily, do you believe that the leadership team has what it takes to take it to the next level?
Exactly. I mean, I completely agree. I just invested in a young startup, 3 young guys, 20 years, and they have so much energy. I mean, I was thinking about myself, I have a lot of energy, but when I talk to those guys, I said, oh my God, I would like to be at this age. They
To
are
be young
burning,
again.
they are burning, and they are and I believe in those guys, I mean, as you said, I mean, you might need to pivot, you might need to change direction slightly, but if you have a great founder team, if they have the right mindset and the right energy, they can make everything happen. And this is also where I'm focusing my investments on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. That's exactly what, if you're a experienced investor in early stage, it's high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
And of course, any money that you give, you have to be willing to part ways with it because you might not get it back, right?
Yeah.
And that's super important. And so in that particular regard, we had so far about 145 investors that have gotten behind us. And those that has helped us bridge the gap as we continue to do product development and build out our infrastructure, our email, our marketing, and all those types of things. And I just did some calculations. Remember, I mentioned that in August of 2022, basically the last 5 months of the year, we converted the company and we stopped taking in enterprise training customers at that time. And so between the first year of no marketing whatsoever, to the second year that we basically only had some marketing for the last 5 months of the year, we grew at about 177% in terms of the total customer base. Now, that's not the 10,000% that some folks are finding, but that also keeps in mind that we didn't have a marketing campaign or plan at all that we were going after in the first 8 months of the year. So now we're sitting at, if you look at our total ARR, we've got about $450,000 in annual recurring revenue. And a big chunk of that is coming from the sales-led growth. And then the rest of it's coming from the product-led growth, of which we believe that the PLG portion will absolutely grow and surpass the sales-led growth in a pretty significant way. However, right now, sales-led growth is pretty dominant, and I'm okay with that. We just closed a deal. One of our enterprise or customers, when I say enterprise, it's anybody that's not a single license at this point, right? SMB, mid-market, enterprise. And I just closed the deal, added on $1,000 in monthly recurring revenue, and got 70 licenses for one company. Now, mind you, that happened over the weekend, closed that over the weekend, just this past weekend. And at the same time, 3 new licenses at $9.97 came in for FlyMSG. So, you ask yourself, where would I want to put my time at? Well, of course, I'd want to put my time on the 70 and the individual one by ones. That's going to happen. And you're betting on the mass quantity and volume in that particular environment. So that's been really our journey. And I've learned so much, running a simultaneous fundraiser for private investors, a 506B or C that we're now going to. And then at the same time, a crowdfunding campaign, and then learning how to address that and talk through that with investors. Because the moment they hear crowdfunding, I have to wait. I say, oh yes, we ran a crowdfunding campaign simultaneously with a 506B. And I want to see their face, because if they go, oh, you did a crowdfunding campaign with the eyes squinted just like that, that's what I'm looking for. Yes, but actually we rolled everybody up into an SPV, and now we've got one line item on the cap table. The moment that I say that to an investor, they know exactly that I am somewhat experienced in this process. And so every investor that I've spoken to so far has said, this is your first time? And I said, yes. And they said, I would not have guessed that. I would have guessed that this is your second time or third time around, right? Because of the level of experience. But I just went through the school of hard knocks and studied, and made an investment in myself by hiring an advisory firm, which, by the way, I exchanged no equity whatsoever. It was all pay to play, if you would, model that I did with the advisory firm. And
I think you have one big USP compared to all the other players on the market. I mean, productivity tools you get, the technology is there, but the content you bring with your product is amazing. I mean, this changes the mindset of the users.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean, there are some, if you look at us versus the competition, there are some, ginormous competitive advantages. And this is why, for us, going back to as an early stage investor, when I did that last investment my first investment that I ever did, by the way, that came back to me at 16.9x return. So literally an investor who put in $50,000 got $1 million check back. And someone who put in $5,000 got an $85,000 check back. By the way, none of us would be angry or upset at getting either of those two checks, right? So again, thinking about betting on what's to come, to your point, if you think about who we were and what we bring to the table, no doubt about it, our competitors are about 2 years ahead of us in terms of the technology. Now we can easily bridge that gap very closely, and we already started bridging about 50% of that gap in the last 3 months. And by the time that we're done here by April of this year of 2023, we would absolutely have been at parity in terms of technology, right? And also surpassed the competition in multiple areas already, and will continue to do that. And that's the way I plan out our development cycle is 50% of what we're doing is net new, 50% is to catch up. This way we can always stay in front of the competition. But to your point, our legacy, our roots was built in developing educational content for the sales community. The sales user or business owner, entrepreneur, solopreneur, that group, that community is our largest group inside of FlyMSG. And at this point, 28%, which is also consistent to all of our competitors. Salespeople are utilizing this tool in advance of having an automation tool or an engagement tool like SalesLoft, Outreach, Apollo, Mixmax, any of those types of other tools that are out there. And so what we did was we developed our training content in Vengreso Legacy LLC, and Vivica and myself put over 10,000 hours with our entire team into developing that content. 10,000 hours, right? So what we did was we took all that on-demand content and brought it over to FlyMSG, and we created now a sales pro plan. You get the tool that will quickly build out a message anywhere online on any HTTP or HTTPS site, and you get the education that teaches you how to go about writing that message and also prospecting. So we are the only competitor now, the only competitor out there that has a price point, a plan that is greater than $10 a month. And for us, it's the salesperson. And that actually drives what we call our ARPU, ARPA, however phrase you want to use it, average revenue per activation, average revenue per unit, average revenue per subscriber. There's all kinds of different acronyms out there. That actually drives our revenue up. And majority of our users are on the Sales Pro plan. And that makes sense because of our legacy roots. So we're getting the education, which it's a low touch, no touch, right? So investors can count that towards, this is actually recurring revenue because you're not actually involved in the delivery of that. And you get the tool to be able to build out these messages anywhere online. And so that's what makes us gives us a big competitive advantage, in addition to the fact that the hardest part about a startup is this first 2 years. In fact, in the first 3 years, 60% of all startups fail.
They fail, yeah.
And the reason for that is because, my gosh, we are going after and we are building the infrastructure of the company. And that infrastructure of the company is a customer service support model, marketing support model, HR, hiring, payroll, systems, tools, all that stuff that takes basically almost 2.5 years. We've averted that because I converted the company from LLC to Inc. I moved everybody over that was applicable and that had the skill set. And now I've got a website with 20,000 visitors a month on it, which are all the target buyers. I've got 105,000 person opt-in list, and I've got 4 million more people that I can cold market. All I need is now money to fuel the engine. And that's where I'm at in terms of our fundraising.
Mind-blowing story. I think we learned so much, in terms of how to pivot, how to basically see what's happening in the market and take these opportunities and turn this into a new business. Making bold decisions to change your whole business model and the whole funding part. I think it's gold for the listeners. Many people are in the process of looking for funds, and I'm talking to entrepreneurs on a daily basis, and this is one of the number one topics they raise. Where can we get the funding? And using a crowdfunding platform, you did it perfectly. Not only for the cash, you also use this for publicity and spread the message. I mean, this is something. It's a different viewpoint on this process. A lot of people, they don't realize that with crowdfunding, they not only get some funds, but they also get a lot of publicity, a lot of market penetration.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I have hosted, and here's a number for you. People are wondering. I'm oftentimes asked by other founders, well, how many meetings did you do? What's that conversion ratio look like? Was it worth it on the crowdfunding side? And so for me, because we have a product led growth strategy, it made absolute sense to run a crowdfunding campaign. People ask me oftentimes, if you didn't have a PLG strategy to this play, would you run a crowdfunding campaign? And the answer would be yes, I would. But I would change the strategy where instead of looking for anybody who is willing to give $100 to $50,000, I would be
Mhm.
looking for and targeting just the C-suite that is willing to give 25K, 50K, 100K, those types of things.
Yeah.
If it was an enterprise play only, yeah, to get them bought in on that, I would start there. What I've done though, Sebastian, is I've done 180 what I call investor meetings. That includes VCs, angels, and crowdfunding campaign folks. 180 over the last 6 months. And out of those 180, we've closed 145.
Hey.
So either my ratio is really good, I'm
Mhm.
selling a great story, or everybody just believes me, and they're following me, and all those reasons for investing are all fine, right?
Yeah.
And out of those investors, we now are getting people to be able to become evangelists, and so now I'm actually equipping our social media influencers as well to help with evangelizing for the platform. So would I do it all over again? The answer is yes, if I get somebody behind me. And if you get that many people behind you that are part of the cause and are
Mhm.
out there evangelizing, even if only, say, 50 of those folks, how about 30 of those folks become
Yeah.
evangelists out of 145? That's 30 more people that are out there that are telling your story and looking for opportunities than you
Exactly.
had before. So I would recommend it. Now, mind you, I told you earlier about WeFunder and their claim of doing 30 to 35% of the total amount of the fundraise. Out of the nearly $250,000, here's the number. They've only done less than 10%. So when I say they've only done, that means their investors on their platform who they brought to the table and they invested. And that 10% didn't come in until about a month and a half ago.
Mhm.
So what happens is the algorithm on these sites, what they're looking for a number, and it's not until you get over $100,000 that now you become important, a little bit
Yeah.
important to the algorithm on these platforms, which
To
is
push you out.
shameful,
Mhm.
and it's really disappointing. And I have been WeFunder's probably worst client because I not only have I told them that they suck on the platform. By the way, I would still raise again on one of these platforms, mind you, right?
Mhm.
But I have found every nook and cranny of a broken platform that they could possibly think of, and their development team probably hates me. And I'm one of the few guys that, like, I'm clicking this button and it doesn't work, and then you report it, and then they're like, "Oh, well, we didn't know it was that." I'm like, "How could you have a 700,000 investors and have raised this much money and not know that this button doesn't
Well,
work?"
well, I see a potential new business coming up for Mario.
Crowdfunding consulting, right?
Or your own
um,
crowdfunding platform, you know?
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, hey, that's another great idea, Sebastian. If this doesn't work, let's talk about that, buddy. No, I mean, it was definitely worth it for me. I would
Mhm.
definitely do it all over again. And I'm still, first off, you can still go in and be an investor. Anybody can go to WeFunder. The you can become a crowdfunding investor with as little as $100. And most people go up to about $24,000 on that particular platform. There are some bigger
Yeah.
investors that will do larger checks, and they don't mind being part of an SPV. But most investors that are looking at that 25 and 50K and above, they
Mhm.
generally in the early stage angel, they want to be directly on top of the cap table, and
Yeah.
that's understandable. So we do have that model open for anybody that's interested. And the end result is we are saving hours upon hours upon hours with the time, and we are improving the lives of individuals, right? So I talked all about our journey as an entrepreneur, but at the end of the day, hopefully you made it to this part of the podcast here and listening in. What we are impacting is people's lives, frankly, and we are taking away frustration from things that we do every single day that really weigh us down and cause us delay.
Exactly.
That put us in the evening work hours after the kids go to bed, puts us right back to our computers to catch up, and that's what we're helping to improve, and that's what I'm most excited about. I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah. And it's been a pleasure having you here on the show. Anything else you like to share? I know there are podcasts, who ask you a question in the end. For example, what is your favorite movie? So if I asked you this question, what would you answer?
I love it. I love it. So actually, up until about 30 days ago, my entire life, I've always said The Goonies. The Goonies has been my favorite movie of all times. It was my childhood movie that I still haven't grown out of. It's where, the kids go on an excursion and they have a mission. They're trying to save their home and they want to find the treasure. And it just personifies how the way I think, which is you go after what it is that you need to go after, despite all odds against you, which is what you need to have as an entrepreneur, right? Despite all odds against you, you still go after it and you make it happen, and dreams do come true. However, most recently, I watched a movie with my kids, and the entire movie, I was crying. And it was a movie called Wonder. And it was about the story of a young boy who was facially deranged. And throughout that entire movie, it was his struggle, entering into elementary school, building friendships and those types of things. And the whole movie, I was crying. Me and my wife, and my two boys, they're 12 and they're 9 now, actually. And they were looking at us like, for real? And me and my wife, because we just felt the pain of this poor boy. But it's such an amazing movie with an amazing storyline. It was such a great learning lesson for my boys, which is, when people who are disadvantaged, we don't ever do what these children did to this boy. We do the exact opposite. And it's just such an amazing message. So Wonder is my new movie.
Okay, I will put it on the list. Definitely have to watch it. Thanks a lot, brother. All the best. And FlyMSG is the way to go.
Go download it. FlyMSG.io, Vengreso.com, or go to WeFunder and become an investor.
Thanks, mate.